This is just a short review on the midpoint of a segment. We have the same formula that we use during our high school years when we talk about solving for the midpoint of the segment. But here, let me add additional discussion relating to the previously informed or given informations or concepts in this playlist. Of course, if we have a segment, it's actually the distance of that. Let's say the distance between points P and Q. Okay, we know that already here. We have the formula, this one here, the length of the difference of the 2 points. So we'll get the vector first, that's Q minus P, takes its length. Using the formulas in this playlist, we will get the distance or the length of the said segment. Okay, and then when we talk about midpoint, so it doesn't just necessarily be a point in between. Okay, this is the length, right? This is the length. I'm writing it here. And if we have here, in this case, PR is equal to PQ plus QR will be established between S. Between S. Okay? Again, this is very short. This is very easy to understand. But I'm trying to establish the idea of this connecting with the previously provided videos. And this here, we established that Q is between the other. So let me change this here so that we will be able to connect the two. So P and R, R minus P. So this is the point in between P and R. Now, if we're talking about midpoint of a segment, this tells us that the distance between P and Q is just equal to the distance between Q and R. This point Q, it's not just between point P, points P and R, but it also bisects the segment, meaning the distances between those other two pairs are just equal. So what can we say about this relationship? Now, take note that the distance of P and R is equal to the sum of 2. So if we have distance of P and Q, as mentioned above, a distance between Q and R, once we have established between S. But since they are equal to one another, that would mean that the distance between P and R is just equal to the distance of P and Q plus, by substitution, distance between P and Q as well. Meaning, the distance between P and R is equal to twice the distance between P and Q. In short, the distance between P and Q is 1/2 the distance between P and R. We know then this is actually Q minus P. Okay, I said this is very short in understanding the formula, but this is actually the proof for that. You have 1/2 R minus P. We are trying to illustrate the formula for Q. I could give you the formula automatically, but this is how we solve the formula. So we can have here, we can return 1/2 inside using the properties of our absolute values. Okay, and then since both of them are on length, so we can simply say Q minus P is equal to 1/2 R minus P. So adding P both sides, Q is actually 1/2 R minus P plus P. Then you could have here Q is 1/2 R minus 1/2 P plus P, right? So this is Q is equal to 1/2 R plus 1/2 P, because this is 1 P here. So Q is actually taking 1/2, that's R plus P, or you can also rearrange it as P plus R. What does this tell us? If you're intending to solve for, because we know already that the distance between P and Q is half of the length, but we are not solving for the length from the point to the midpoint, but we can use this later on. The point here is to illustrate the formula in solving for Q. It's actually half, okay, the sum of the components of P and R. We know that if we add the components, that would mean add the first components of P and R, add the second components of P and R. So basically, it connects to this formula here. Components for the midpoint is actually, for the first component, it's 1/2 of the sum of the first components. Let's just say for general form, x sub 1 plus y sub 1, and then 1/2 the sum of their second components. Okay, this is the formula we use in our high school years, and this is also connected to this. Again, sorry for saying that this would be shorter, but the understanding of this form is very important as illustrating here. So we'll be using this formula or a version of that as we solve for the midpoints of segment later on. This is by the discussion using the already identified concepts in this playlist. Thank you very much for watching.